introduction to social psychology. We, as were discussing about group processes that talked about competition and cooperation, today we move to a huger aspect of groups, which are group conflicts, which are seen mostly in every group, no matter how cohesive, how bonded, and how long lasting that group has been. So, what are group conflicts to us? Group conflicts are usually conflicts which are coming because of incompatible interest among the members. So there can be at times that members are having some interests and some needs which are not compatible with the others. So speaking of that, conflict is very different from competition. It is not about individual satisfaction of your needs, but conflict arises from incompatible needs and interests within the group. Whereas competition does lead to goal achievement, conflicts at times might not be leading to any goal achievement to most parties who are under conflict. Also, when we talk about conflict, that is just a perception that could be also at times very vague. When we talk about conflicts, and conflicts are also at a faulty perception about somebody or some interest which is not correct according to you, but still leading to a conflict. Whereas competition is a behavioral aspect, which is we are usually in action, whereas conflicts are not something which are in action. It is thought over, it is cognition, it is perception, it is thought over. So, what could be some causes of conflicts that we can talk about? One of the most common, which is a conflict in most of the things, is faulty communication. Faulty communication obviously is one of the most common cause of group conflicts among members. Also, at times it could be, in many cases, a faulty attribution which has led to conflict, which was given by Barron in 1990. So after failures of achievement of one's own interest, people try to attribute the failures to somebody else. That's the process of attribution. What is attribution? Attribution is a process where you want to know the cause behind some individual's behavior, and at times we attribute personal, which is personal distribution attribution, and at times we do it on other people or other situation, which is called situational attribution. So faulty attribution is the cause of our failure we impose on other people. So for example, in a group, you've been given a role and you were not able to fulfill that role, and the conflict arises when you say that I was able to do it. It's because of the interference of this third person or fourth person that I failed. So, what are you attributing your failure to? You're attributing the cause behind your behavior to somebody else. So, that is faulty attribution, which interferes obviously in smooth functioning of a group. Faulty communication could be one of them. Then there is poor performance. At times, when the group is not completing its target and it's always failing, there is always poor performance that leads to a lot of discussion, heated arguments, blame game on one another that leads to conflict again. Then there is perceived inequity with respect to the work shared and the reward that you get. So let's take an example. There's a group of five which is doing something, and three members received a reward which was considerably less in comparison to the contribution they gave, and the other two received a higher reward in comparison to the other three. So that is perceived inequity when members feel that we have not been rewarded appropriately in relationship to what kind of contribution that they did. So it's like the input is not equal to the output. That's a perceived inequity. Then there could be a complete sense of discontentment, not feeling happy that why I'm a part of this group. I do not get rewards. I do not get the incentives. I am not treated equally like the other members. So it's like a feeling of deprivation and feeling of discontentment that comes into the members of the group that can also lead to conflict. Members can move apart or have a heated discussion regarding the same. Also, at times, that feeling that the other group does not respect to the norms, which is, at times when we are having some intergroup competition or intergroup meetings, at that point of time, there can be possibilities that group, reaches to a conflict stage when they feel that the other members in the group are not respecting the norms which are apart. Let's take an example, when you go for a meeting, punctuality is something that you should look forward to. So, speaking of punctuality, which is reaching on time, starting on time, finishing on time, that we should be doing. But at times, what happens is that members do not reach on time and they feel, okay, the other member is not following the norm, the other member is not respecting the rules and the norms, which could lead to, again, conflicts between the members of the group. After this, let's move to what are the conflicts components, which is When we speak about some of the components, why can other components of conflicts that could be, see, at times, conflicts are also as a result of organizational structure. So what could be the outcome of conflict? Why are they happening? They're happening because of also personality differences. They're happening because of communication problem. They're happening because of task interdependence also, which is, um, let's take an example that at times when members are sitting together and they're discussing their issues regarding a very serious topic in their group. Let's take it, there is a scarcity of resources. And when we're talking about scarcity of resources, this is a very important discussion in groups when the input has been very less because they do not have the resource, and the output also needs to be good. So they feel they do not have something which is proper resources, and then leads to some components of conflicts that could be. So there are some other components which could lead to conflicts, which could be task interdependence. There are limited resources that people have, organizational structure being a problem. Why does conflict come? Because of organizational structure. At times in a group there are members which are not of equal distribution of qualification or education. So, there's a conflict of I am better than you in my group. You people are not as good as I am. So that is an organizational structure. We are doing the same task, but all are getting the same pay, but we do not have the same qualification. So that could be an organizational dysfunction that could lead to more conflicts. There is task interdependence. We need to know that where there's a member of five and there's a member of five when a group has to represent or do a presentation in front of somebody, all five needs to be present. The task is actually mutually divided into all five. And imagine two get absent and three are available. What happens? The task of the two also falls on the other three. So this is task interdependence. There is obviously going to be some shallowness in the presentation work because the other members did not present. Then communication problems is another task which could lead to conflicts. Personality differences, in a way that we all are very different. There are high individual differences in intelligence and personality of people. So let's take an example that a role that we all in a group are working for requires very high interpersonal skills, and out of which one of them is not very good with social skills, very introverted, does not like hanging out with people, does not like an open conversation, does not do more than small talks with their colleagues. Communication could be a problem with them. And also personality. Our attributes do not change. Even if we start working, our attributes do not change over time. Then we have incompatible goals. Maybe the group goals are not the goals of the individual. They always have that usual conflict within that why am I doing this? What is this? So these are other major components of group conflicts that could also increase the conflict with the passage of time. Now, whenever conflict arises, I feel something that every good group look forwards to is resolutions. They need solutions and conflict resolution strategies. So one of the most simple resolution strategies I feel is altering our perception. Look at the causes. The causes was faulty perception. We need to change that perception. We need to alter that perception, educate people, talk about whatever the misconception that has been, clarify the misconceptions abounds or the faulty attribution that you've made, that my pitfall or my failure is because of the other person. We need to clarify. We need to make sure there's a proper reasoning between the members of the group, which will alter the perception. So this is one of the most simple thing of changing the cause and the strategy. You have a strategy in hand. Then we have negotiation. Negotiation is like when both parties are undergoing conflict. There are two people in a group which constantly fighting, constantly having arguments. So what can we do? We can convince them to come on a mutual base, not to fight, and always when working come down to mutual basis, mutual thoughts, and mutual acceptable things which are equally good to the party A and party B. So negotiation usually is one of the most simplest form of conflict resolution, which is utilized in every area, no matter what kind of group that you have. Is it a social, emotional, educational, organizational, any kind of group? I feel negotiation is one of the most simple things which are used by most groups. Then we come to a introduction of subordinate goals. This goal was actually it came out as an experiment which was done by sheriff and sheriff, which was two individuals, which are sheriff and sheriff, which was 1958. So subordinate goals are goals that an organization may introduce a superordinate goal. So superordinate goals are goals which reduce the conflicts among the members of the group. And also, this superordinate goals can also be used for intergroup conflicts, not intra only, but also intergroup. So superordinate goals are goals that are goals which both parties are conflicting for and needs to achieve. These goals can be achieved by combined effort by both parties. There was a real life experiment which was done for superordinate goals are usually superior than the conflict. So I'll tell you the experiment to keep it more simple. Sheriff and Sheriff did an experiment, but there were two different groups. So here, this is an intergroup conflict, which can be this superordinate goals can be used for even the intra-group conflict also. So what did he do was Sheriff and Sheriff, they took two groups, Group A and Group B. And in the beginning, they designated that this is the plan of action. This is how your goals are, Group A goals. They need to finish it by this time. And this is the target of Group B goals, and they need to finish by the stipulated designated time or whatever that they have. Now, suddenly, what happened? The experimenter, which was Sheriff and Sheriff, he started creating scarcity of major resources which were a part of both the groups, which is Group A also needed it equally and Group B also. But these superordinate, these scarcity of resources that we were doing, they were usually associated to survival. It was less representation of the achievement of the goal. So this is not the goal, but these needs are more like survival needs, which are creating scarcity, like food, water. So what he did was Sheriff and Sheriff, he created a scarcity of water for all the groups, which is Group A also and the Group B also. Now what, see, this is a survival need. If you do not survive, if you're falling ill, if you do not get the right amount of water, there is possibility that your members will perish. And this was equally impacting both of them, which is Group A also and Group B also. So what did it started doing? They started pooling water and equally started distributing it to both the groups. So what is happening? Our needs, which is superordinate goals that we have made of collecting water and equal distribution of water to both the groups. So there is only one resource, there is one tap which is giving out water, and that too very less. And there are approximately 20 members, 10 in one group and 10 in another group, and you need to divide that water. So what they did, they collected a bucket, filled the water, and divided it into two groups equally. Why? Because this is a survival need. This is not related to something which is group completion and group goal completion, but a superordinate goal which is superior than your conflict. So usually superordinate goals are a very good way to even reduce intra-group conflicts, which is create a scarcity of a resource which is of a survival need within the group. So this is one of the most what do you call this? Some of the most successful strategies for conflict resolution, negotiation being one of the most common. And there are others that you can look at the picture, which is at times when we are competing, remember accommodation, cooperating with people, accommodating, collaborating other people's effort at the right time also reduces your, conflict. It also increases the bond, the cohesiveness, and the importance of relationship, and avoiding competing, not looking into your group members' needs, competing with them for the same resource. If, for example, we talked about superordinate goals, if we start fighting for that survival need, what will it create? It will create competition. It will further create scarcity of the resource. Like we'll get it worse with the passage of time. So these are three ways, which is compromise, accommodating, collaborating other people's need, which will increase the importance of relationship, also increase the achievement towards group goals. Now, moving to some other conflict resolution strategies. Some other could be intergroup group contacts. So, for example, if we have two groups fighting, we should make sure that we have a friendly match here. Our cricket teams have friendly matches here to reduce the misunderstanding, the altering perception, and to create that friendly relationship between the two groups. Then we have structural solution. So, if we have an organizational structural problem, which was the intra-group reason also, which I showed as an image. So what could be? We start redistribution of resources and position and give more justice to people's qualification and what they're getting. So what are we doing? We are taking care of the organizational structure as one of the cause and solving the cause, which is reducing the impact of that cause. We are redistributing the solutions, which are we are redistributing the needs. We are making sure that we are giving people their designation or their titles as per their qualification. So that will reduce the organizational destructure, the organizational dysfunctions which is happening. Then redrawing of group boundaries. This is very important. We need to keep creating group norms, fresh norms now and then, so that it reduces the group conflicts. If we use the same norms for years and years, remember first that they will not be followed by some people and it will be followed by the other, which will again increase the group conflict. So we should be keep redrawing conditions, keep changing conditions with each goal, which is redrawing of boundaries. And now, after we understood that conflict being a part, a very huge part of inter and intra groups also as a process, we can resolve them. There are possibilities that we have better communication. We have restructuring of boundaries, restructuring of the structural solutions. We have superordinate goals. We make sure there is an intergroup contact amongst the members of two groups. We have something which is now leading from group conflict, which is communication. Communication is usually seen a key to bridge gaps between two people, two things, two conflicts that we are having. So, communication is a process of interpersonal interaction in which thought, ideas, emotion, and understanding between a sender and a receiver are exchanged. This was given by Go and Sashes in 2005. This is a very fresh definition which is provided. So it's an intergroup, it is an interpersonal interaction between a person who's sending an information and a person who's receiving the information. There are some communication styles also. So we all do not communicate similarly. We have high individual differences in personality. Because of that personality difference, we have conflicts. So we also have something which is communication styles, a consistent way of you communicating across, through a passage of time and across time and situation is called communication style. So the first that we come down to is a passive communication style. Passive communications are, communicators which are usually considered as people pleaser. They are a little shy. They usually go along with most of the people. They conform to group norms. They do not deny most of the things which is coming in between their individual urges. They generally, their body language is confused because they're people pleaser. They wait for cues from outside. They agree to conform to things which are coming from outside. So they have a confused body language. They avoid eye contact. You'll find them, ringing the pencil, looking here and there around because they are waiting for a decision to conform to. And they're passive communicators. Someone who's shy, do not want to come in the front and talk about their opinions. They don't want to be assertive also. They don't want to be assertive. Okay. Then moving to the next, which is aggressive communication, which is like a complete opposite of a passive communicator. Aggressive is something, a kind of style where communication at times usually disregard the others. A lot of people use humor to disregard other people, to make them feel at a superior position, that this is my way of style. But that is usually an aggressive style of communication. When you disregard other people, don't listen to the other people, force your own opinions and own your own rights and wrongs on the other people, at that point of time, that is a way that you lead into an aggressive communication. So you don't listen to other people's opinion. You do not consider their opinion. You disregard other people's thought and ideas. That is an aggressive communicator. Far different from an assertive one. It is not something which is assertive. Now, moving to these are the other types of communication that we will look forward to. So after the communication style. So let's move to other communication styles and move back to the image. We have passive aggressive communication also. This is a combination of passive and aggressive. So in this communication style, a person uses passive mode of communication that has an aggressive result. So this could be they often find it difficult to direct their thoughts and ideas. So they're passive. But whatever they get as a result is a very aggressive thing, which is they are looking forward to crack a deal, which they are doing passively, like sending mails, just taking a yes, giving reminders. But what they get as a result is an aggressive deal, which is a huge money making, money minting deal that you have. So it's a combination of passive and aggressive. So communication is in a passive way, result getting is in an aggressive way. Then we have an assertive communication, found mostly to be one of the best ways of communication. People use an assertive style, which is where you put down your thoughts and opinion, express it with a very stern attitude, which is very clearly and precisely, but do not disregard people. We usually get confused between aggression and assertion. Aggression when is like when you impose your ways and your thoughts and ideas and disregard also other people and their ways of communication. Assertiveness is usually clearly and precisely putting your thoughts and opinions respectfully, which is you do give other people a chance to communicate, other people, and consider their values and thoughts, but you first respectfully express your thoughts and opinions. So they considered value of their own also, but also the need of the others. So they don't disregard, they consider, but they make sure that their thoughts and their ideas are very nicely expressed, communicated, and understood well. So that is the assertive communication. So let's go back to the image that we had here. These are the some other kinds of information communication that we have, which are, see, communication is always an act of transmitting information, ideas, your attitudes, your opinions to other people. It can happen in more than one ways. One of the most common is verbal. So at the moment what we are having is verbal communication, which is I am verbally speaking and you'll be taking it or literally to yourself. Then the other ways which education field includes after the verbal communication is written communication, where you write your ideas, you write your examination and get your performance as a result. Then the other that we have is mass communication. Apart the verbal communication, the way of me teleporting my information to all of you is mass. So these ideas and this unit 8 of introduction to social psychology is going to go on mass media, which is going to be available to hundreds of people. So that is something which is mass media. Then we have visual communication, something which in terms of children love. Little children are very, very receptive to visual communication, audios, videos, even adults are. Adult loves beautiful pictures to be seen and finds it attractive. Then we have non-verbals. Non-verbals are gestures which do not use gestures and facial expressions which do not use words. So, waving at some people, telling them to stop. So that's a non-verbal communication where you do not use something which is your words. Then there is group communication, which is happening amongst the group members and like two parties sitting in, it's a group communication happening. A group discussion can also be taken as a group communication. Then we have a feedback communication. You go to a restaurant, sign a feedback, tell about what was good and what was bad. That's something which is a feedback communication. Writing reviews about a restaurant, writing reviews about movies is a feedback communication. Always just a one-way thing. Whatever you have received, you provide a feedback for the same. So that's a feedback communication. So these are different kinds of communication, and we did the different styles of communication. Your consistent way of communicating, which were 4 in number: passive aggressive, and assertive. One of the best is found to be assertive in nature. Now let's move to something which is what are the barriers of effective communication. So while you're communicating verbally, while you're communicating non-verbally, what can obstruct the understanding of that content, which is, for example, I am giving out information, you need to encode it, which is receive and understanding it. What could be the barriers? One could be physical barriers. Physical could be a distance. Physical could also be it could be at times the temperature, the sound, the place that you're sitting into. That could be physical barriers. Psychological barriers are already formed attitudes, opinions, prejudices that we have about people, situation, countries. At times at times children are moving out for post graduation or higher level education, and they move out for all of these higher education whatever courses to outside India or another city also. And at times we are filled with opinions about that city or about that country, that okay, this country will not be treating you well, they do not have people who are very friendly. So what have you done? Before you start communicating with people of that country, you already have a psychological barrier. You already have an attitude made for these people, which will always give an altered perception in your mind. So you're communicating very friendlily, very friendly, you're communicating with them. You're very, very assertively you're putting out your opinions. But at the back of the mind, when you go back, you rethink and you introspect, you feel, okay, this person is not nice. I probably should not be working with them. So what's happening? We have an attitude which is already formed, a prejudice, a collection of negative notion about the specific people, specific country, or specific community. That could be psychological barriers. There could be semantic barriers. That is not being able to understand, which is word meaning. Simple, do not understand the context which is being explained to you. Then there could be technological barriers. I'm sure in pandemic when we were having online classes, I'm sure there were technological barriers. Classes getting dropped, children getting zoomed out, like moving out, completely cut off from the classes. So those were technological barriers that we had. Then we have organizational barriers, which are structural barriers of the organization. People not liking the hierarchy not functioning well, the norms not being very clear of the organization. Some norms are correct to one part of the group and not applied to the other part of the group. So it's not very universally applied structure of the organization. These could also be some barriers which could reduce the effectiveness of your communication. So this was communication with types, your communication style, which is a consistent way that you use to communicate, and effective barriers that you have. Now let's move to a new unit, which is unit 9. As we did group processes, so whatever happens in a group, now we move to social influence. Social influence usually is a study of human behavior. It's a part of social psychology where people around us exert influence, and this influence is on our belief system, our perception, our behaviors, thoughts, and feelings. And these people can be real also and imagined also. So at time it could be imagined also, like I don't want to give an example, but social media is actually an imagined social influence. People end up clicking likes on you and everything if you have a public profile. At times people not even watch your entire content and they click a like. And at times people just see the entire content and still not give a like. So we are dependent on an influence which is actually imagined. You don't know probably you got 1,000 likes, but you don't know the 900s in that. So that's an imagined one. And a real presence of others also is a social influence. Then we move to the first kind of social influence. There are three types of influence that happens on us. First is conformity, then is compliance, and the last influence of social is obedience. So let's start with conformity. Conformity is one of the most famous influence in a group process. It's a type of social influence which involves change in the belief or behavior in order to fit into a group. So it's a complete group pattern social influence. So conformity will happen where? Always in a group. Why? We conform to be a part of the group. So this change is in response to the real, which is involving the physical presence of others and even imagined presence of others as a pressure of social norm, group pressure. Like whenever when we have the pandemic, when you sit in front of the of your official meetings, there's a code of conduct that you have, which is the dress code that you have, people wearing ties and shirt on top of that. So that's like an imagined presence of people you are you know uh, doing still using the code of conduct and still adhering to the code of conduct, which is dressing in a proper code, your ties and shirts. Teachers when teaching are properly dressed, they have their attires which are neatly pressed, they look very neat. The reason during pandemic is adhering to the group norms, which is adhering to the school norms, which is again a group. Also, conformity can also be defined as a yielding group pressure, which is very true. We can see conformity as also a group pressure. Like, let's take an example. Friends have decided, it's a group of friends have decided they have to meet at this place all the time. They never change their point of contact as a place. So every time that the group decides to meet, everyone is collected there. They can think of a better place. No, it's a group pressure. So it's yielding to group pressures also. Also, you don't want to be a misfit, so you agree to whatever the group decides. Group pressures can be of different forms. At times this conformity is happening because of too much of criticism. They want to avoid the criticism, they want to avoid teasing, they want to avoid any kind of bullying which is happening from the superiors to the group members. So conformity is a majority influence because it's happening from a group which is huger in number. So it's a majority influence. Now let's come to a very famous experiment of Solomon Ash, who actually proved that how does conformity takes place despite knowing that it could be wrong. So group pressures are such a strong influence, such a strong social influence, because we don't want to be disregarded by that group. We don't want to be feel like a misfit in the group. So Solomon Ash did an experiment. It was a classical experiment to exhibit the phenomena of conformity. Ash experiment involved having people who were in an experiment pretend to be a regular participant along with those who were the actual participants. So there were some fake participants and there were some actual participants also in the group. So each person in the group had to state aloud a comparison of three lines. So let's take an example. Solomon Ash conducted a experiment where they have to go to a room, and it's a group, they all are a group, and they go inside a room, and they have to then individually state which line is, A, B, and C is most likely to be similar to the target line. So let's take an example. There are five members in the group. The five members goes inside the room. The room has four lines, A, B, and C, which are of different length, and the target line, which we have to match it with A, B, and C. So you have to tell that is it A, which is similar to the target line? Is it the B? Is it the C? So the answer was always obvious. The real participants sat at the end of the row. So how did Solomon Ash, you know, did the experiment? He made sure that in the group, the fake, the ones who are actually trained, go first. So they went and gave the wrong answer. So there were 18 trials, like 18 times this happened, and the confidants gave the wrong answer. So the confederates were the ones which were the fake participants. They were told you have to give the wrong answers. And the real participants exactly at the end came at the end. So after 12 trials, which were critical trials, which were like people were actually finding out, is it this line which is equal to the target area? Ash was interested to see that did the real participants conform with the majority view, which was the confidant, which was the fake participant. Now I will show you the image of the Ash experiment. So do we see? One is the reference. Reference is the target line, and then we have an A, B, and C that we have. So most of the confidants, which was the fake participants, came first and said that the target line is similar to A. And Solomon Ash experiment picked up the wrong line to see that will the real participant conform to the group. So now what happens is, out of the 18 trial, 12 to 13 trial actually confirm that people, despite knowing that A was not similar to the target line, agreed that A is similar to the target line. Did you realize why? There's a norm which has already been established. So imagine if there are 10 people and 8 were the confidants and 2 are just real participants. The 8 of them go and say that A is similar to the target line, reference line, which is the reference line. Now the real participants were unable to differ their opinion because they do not want to be a misfit. They do not want to be bullied. They do not want to be teased, or they do not want to be the reason for an incorrect answer which they are not sure. So what do? They also copy the confidants and say, okay, it's the A which is similar to target line. So what was the result of the finding? Ash measured the number of times each participant confirmed with the majority view. So, on an average, one third of the participants who were placed in the situation went along and confirmed clearly with the incorrect answer. So, 32% of people agreed. Whereas over the critical 12 trials, 75% confirmed to at least once. So, there were 18 trials, at least 12 trials, wrong answers were given by everybody. So remember, 75% of the time we will agree to the wrong answers because of what? Group pressures. And 25% they did not confirm. So the reason that why do we call it a majority influence? Because there is something which a majority does, creates a norm, and we do not want to be a misfit, so we agree to the norm. So your agreeing to that influence is called conformity. Now, the impact of conformity was also given. So, what happens because of this? One major reason that conformity gives us is we are living in an introspection illusionary thing. This was a term which was given by Berger, Molonky, and Tronen in 2007, which was it's not very old. It was given not very old, like not around 50 years back. It's just 20 years, 15 to 20 years before researched concept. It was called as an introspective illusionary or introspection illusionary, proposed that we conform to the social norm often through automatic route without our conscious awareness and beyond introspective boundary. So introspection is what? You thinking back and talking to yourself, is it the correct answer? Do I need to go by the majority? We don't do that. We live on the illusion that 8 of them has said the correct thing. So without any conscious thought, you say yes. It's the A line which is similar to the reference line. So which is called the introspection illusion, 2007 as a term given. Then in 1955, Deutsch and Girard identified two major reasons. then why are people confirming? See, people are usually confirming because, again, there is a fear. There is a fear of getting bullied, getting teased. There is a fear of getting, that misfit feeling. Also, because of two major concepts: informational influence and normative influence. See, informational influence is something which is very genuine. When people do not know the correct answer, they go with the group. They feel, okay, the group might be saying, right, I really do not know what this concept is all about, so I'll agree to the majority. This is because you are lacking information, you do not know about that topic, so you go with the group. The other is normative influence, which stems from the desire to avoid punishment. This is that feeling of misfit. I don't want to be teased. I don't want to be bullied by them. I don't want to be a misfit. I want to be a part of this reward and be part of this group. So, what do we do? To avoid that punishment and that disregard, you agree to the group. So, what are we agreeing to? We're agreeing to the group norm, irrespective of the correct, incorrect answers, correct, incorrect procedures, to avoid the punishment or to avoid feeling, a misfit, and to even gain rewards. You feel that the group will get the reward, so why should I not go with the group? I will agree with the group because group is going to get a reward. So this is normative influence and information influence, which was given by Deutsch and Girard, stating in 1955. These are two major reasons that most people confirm. So why are we confirming and taking that pressure on us, that social influence on us? Because of informational and because of normative influence. After this, let's move to factors which might increase or reduce conformity. First is, at times, more difficult the task is, difficulty of the task. Difficult the task can lead to both increased conformity also and decreased conformity also, which is when we feel that the task is very difficult, we feel let's go with the group. I really don't know what the task is all about, so let's go with the group. At times, when the task is very difficult, people feel that how the others are doing. Let me find out my own answers and find out what is the correct thing. So this is what? This is both increasing and decreasing the conformity. Then individual differences. Individual differences are personal characteristic. How motivated are you to achieve your strong leadership ability? These can reduce conformity. So if you're highly motivated, you feel this is your task, I need to go do and be concerned with my results, it will reduce conformity. You will not see other people and their results. You will just see your result and your contribution, which will not allow you to conform to group norms. Then group size. See, more are the people likely to conform in situation, lesser is the people, less likely to conform. So when there are just three people, remember there is no group, there is no norm. So conformity would be less. There are 20 people, 15 people are saying something, I'm sure the five will conform. Larger the group, more is the conformity. Lesser is the group, lesser is the conformity. Then we come to cultural differences. People from collectivistic cultures are more likely to conform, which is one culture together sitting and talking about a theme, talking about a topic, they will eventually conform to ideas. So, this is conformity that can be impacted by these factors. How do we resist it? How do we reduce conformity? Conformity or group pressures ultimately. So, we need to reduce it. First is maintain your individuality, have knowledge about the topic that you're going for, maintain your personal control, which is make sure that your behaviors are not controlled by the social influence but by your ideas, thoughts, and opinions. Also, encourage, there should be norms that should encourage individualism, your individual identity, your group goals, your group achievements. So, this can control group pressures, yielding group pressures that we spoke about. This was one kind of social influence. Let's move to another kind of social influence that we have, which is called as compliance. Compliance is very different from conformity that we talk about. Compliance is defined as a behavior where you just comply to somebody's request which is coming to you. Such requests at times can be direct and sometimes very indirect. So, what are the different principles and strategies in compliance, which we talk about? So, compliance could be, depend upon six principles. Friendship. At times we comply. Why? Because we're friends with somebody. This is a request coming from my friend. I need to say a yes. Then commitments. I need to be consistent in my commitment. I have always been compliant. I need to say a yes. Then is reciprocity. He's done me a favor. I need to return the favor back. Then is social validation. People take this to be a correct thing. I need to say yes to these requests. This is socially correct. So when you feel that you've been validated socially, you will say a yes to that request. It's again a very indirect form, but compliance. Then is authority, which is very, very rigid. legitimate, strong, and direct. Anything coming to an authority figure, you don't say, no, boss, I cannot do this, you're wrong here. We say, yes, sir, we will be getting the result, but probably in a different way. So that's again a very direct way. So these are principles which was given by Siddelny in 1994 and improved in 2006 by adding 6 principles that tell us that how do we comply. Friendship, there could be authority, reciprocity, social validation. There could be at times consistency and commitment that we are looking forward to. So compliance is a second form of social influence, which is changing behavior in response to a request. So let's move to techniques of compliance. What do we use to make those requests complete by others? So let's take an example. You're going usually. Let's take this example: sellers and marketing people. What are the kind of techniques are they using to make you comply to a situation? So there is 4 or 5 techniques that we have. First is the door in the face. Just imagine this door in the face technique. This approach starts with the marketer starts by a larger commitment. So the marketer says, buy this entire, commodity or a gadget. This will, simplify your need like this, and this. And suddenly when you refuse it, because, spending a usual amount on a commodity, which is huge, not only in terms of physical aspect, but also the price, we hesitate. We hesitate spending thousands of an amount on a gadget. Then, what does the marketing person seller does? He gives you a smaller deal, lesser in value. So he shows, see, the same gadget, the same facilities you are getting, but in a smaller price. What happens here? The face in the door. You start with a bigger pitch in with a bigger aspect, and then you reduce it, which is called as the smaller one. And you feel, okay, this small amount and all the facility, oh, this is a reasonable thing, and you pick it up. So that's something which is used by sellers most of the time. Also with big company deals that you're holding on to, they show you a bigger thing and then they quote something big and then they reduce it, stating, see, I am providing you this in comparison to the other company in a very small amount. So that's how we agree to the door in the face technique. Then we have the foot in the door. Foot in the door is the marketers start by asking for a smaller commitment. And once you comply to the smaller commitment, they ask for a larger commitment. So this is like, for example, you ask to one of your friends, please, can you make me one call for the day? I am running out of time. Your friend makes that one official call for you, supports you. Then you tell him the next day, can you please make me another 2, 3 calls because I'm running out of time? So we start with a small request, which obviously will be compliant. Someone asking you for a glass of water, such a small thing it is. You will obviously go and give it. The second the person tells you, can you fill my bottle, please? Then after that, you go on to something which is after the bottle, can you do it every day for me? So this is what is the foot in the door. You start with a small thing and then the door, which is foot in the door. So after saying a yes to a smaller thing, you continue asking for a bigger, favor. Then we come to another technique, which is that's not all technique. This technique is often something which is used as a television, commercial, and informational thing. Television informational, which we use as a term. Once a product has been pitched in, the seller then adds an additional offer before the potential purchaser has made a decision. So let's take an example. You want to buy a phone. They say with the phone, like there are some phones which do not anymore have chargers coming along with them. So they say with the phone, with such a huge amount, we give you the charger free, we give you a plan of 1 year free, data cable, which is, a data charge, which is going to be free from 1 year. So that's not all. There is something extra which is being added. So the goal is to make the offer more appealing. And you feel if you're spending a huge amount, you're getting more products in that too. So with the phone, you get a cover, you get the charger, you get an entire 1 yearly deal of the data that you use. Tell me if it's not a lucrative offer. So that's not all technique. Then we have another, which is the low ball technique. Low ball technique is something which is the strategy which involves getting a person to make a commitment and then raising the terms and standards of that commitment. For example, a salesperson might get you to agree to buy a particular cell phone and plan at a lower price, then add hidden figures. Oh, this is the GST. Oh, this is added with this. So when you buy something, let's take an example. You're going to buy a television or a microwave. With that microwave, additional, ma'am, this is the griller which is also coming. If you want to remove it, we'll remove it. This is just a small amount added to it. So it's like low ball technique. give it at a pitch it at a very small price, and then add. This is another thing which is added, smaller hidden fees coming into play. Then after these techniques, there are some techniques that arises due to scarcity of resources or scarcity of things, which is deadline and play it hard to get. So deadline, these are something you can now see in the new years, which is deadline is coming and receiving it at a deadline. So which is like uh, the sales that we have in the market, which is gives you a sale of the played hard to get and the deadline. Sale just for the last 5 days. 31st the sale will get over, you need to pitch in before 31st. So you give a deadline, only till the 31st we are providing you the sale. So people feel, oh my god, after first it's going to get to the normal prices, I'm getting a offer of 50% only till 31st, so let's make most of it. Then it's playing hard to get. Sales only during the weekend. So they attract your weekends. They get you to the mall to the weekends. So that's playing hard to get. So they restrict the time. Scarcity of resources. When they feel that they do not have much time, they use these two: deadline and playing hard to get. 1 day sale in between, like Diwali, we usually have 2 days sale. Come and grab it. So 2 days before Diwali, they put the sale for you, and it's like playing hard to get. They might have a sale of 20%, 10%. They might be selling a product of 100, 120 in 100% by reducing the value for you and showing that it's reduced 20% and 30%. So that's playing hard to get. So these are some techniques of compliance. This is how people make you comply, especially marketing, sellers, even our confidants. This is how it looks. The three image, the techniques that we did: foot in the door in the face, low balling. That's not all. Now, let's move to the last social influence that we have, that we will talk about, which is obedience. When we talk about obedience, we talk about conformity and compliance. See the difference between all three. We'll do the difference too. So, the difference is obedience is one of the most direct, remember? Conformity is one of the most least. Why conformity was one of the least? The reason is that we conform to an unknown norm which is set up without being said. So, norms usually, like a dress code in the group, usually sets in automatically and everyone follows it. It's a norm. It's not been stated, but one leader or two, three people as leaders are doing it. We end up doing it. Then, whereas when we compare it with obedience, obedience is a very direct thing. So when we say direct, direct is you've been told to do it and you have to agree to it. Then we talk about compliance. Compliance is a completely different thing, a completely different social influence, which is something, a request is being made to you, and there are techniques and ways used for you to agree to that request. So let's come to obedience, which is one of the most direct form of social influence. It's a form of social influence that involves performing an action under the order of an authority figure. So this is a form of social influence which is direct in nature, as I said, and you behave in a particular way because you've been told to. And it can be at times highly destructive. Obedience at times can actually be having a constructive pattern, which is one side constructive, and it can also be destructive. So, for example, military troops obeying their commands can be brutally, towards their target. There could be like military troops obeying their command to brutally hit or whatever to their target. So that's like an obedience. We need to be doing that. That's something which is serving the purpose of your job. So you need to do it. Now, to tell that there can be times that obedience can be destructive in nature and how it is not always very helpful, Milgram did an experiment. Milgram did an experiment of obedience to authority that can be quite often, but the experiment by Milgram quite often can be taken as a high level of submission by the others and highly destructive. So let's come to the experiment. The experiment of Milgram was conducted on all males, and here again there were real participants also, and there were participants which were confidants and fake participants. So real participants were paired with another participant who is in reality a fake participant, an assistant of the researcher. So let's take an example. You are the real participant, I am the fake one. So you have been told that you are participating, and this is the person who is an assistant of researcher for you. So he is going to assist you in this research. In each pair, one participant is the teacher and the other participant is the learner. So the real participant is made to sit in front of the apparatus, I'll show you the image. This is the image. So one participant is what? The learner is usually the participant, which is the fake participant. So the real participant is made to sit in front of the apparatus, look at the fake test subject and the subject experimenter, and undergoes participant to keep going on. And this one is subject administering shock. So there is a learner who's the assistant, and here's the person who the experimenter who's conducting the experiment is the real participant. So the real participant has been told, I'll tell you the experiment and then we'll read a little about it. The real participant is told that whenever your learner, which is the fake participant here, does any mistake in learning, please give him an electric shock. See? So authority, you say, okay. And you've been first told that the shock is very minor. So you say, fine. But it's been told that whenever the learner makes errors, you will increase the intensity of the shock. So you increase the intensity of the shock. So the experiment starts. It's visible that the real participant who is administering the shock, the subject, he starts giving shocks. And the experiment is planned in such a way that the learner will make mistakes. So our fake confidant will make a mistake. He's making mistakes over mistake, and it's been told more the number of mistake goes on, higher will be the intensity of the shock. So if you start with a 50 volt, you go to 100 volt, you go to 150 volt. So every mistake will increase the intensity of the shock. So every time the learner made a mistake, the learner made an error, the real participant gave him a shock to the learner. So if he hesitated, the experimenter pressurized him. So the ones who was actually the experiment of the entire thing, that you need to continue grading him. This is a part of our experiment. You cannot discontinue the experiment. This is incorrect. You have to continue. So the pressure coming from an authority figure, you have no choice but continue. So what happens next? It was found that the reason for this destructive obedience is why did the experimenter here keep going and giving the shocks to the person? It was found that the real subject kept giving the shock till 450 volt, which is increasingly quite high. It could be fatalistic to some people, but he kept giving it. On a real thing, the real confidant was receiving the shock, but very minor. The intensity was not getting increased, it was just shown to the subject. So the subject is feeling, oh, I am giving shocks which are higher and higher in intensity. So see, this is how obedience can be destructive. We keep doing things knowing despite it, it's harming the others. So now let's come to the fact, reason for this destructive obedience. Why do we obey? Why do we do this? People obey in order to be relieved of the guilt. They want to be, I've been commanded by the others, I don't know. Like at most of the organization, what do we say? Our heads have told us to do this. I'm so sorry, I deny you the proposal because my head did not agree. You become guilt-free by obeying. People giving commands usually are wearing uniforms. So the collared, white-collar people, we have authority figures because they're white-collar people. They have the authority, they have the power in the society. You feel it's the norm to obey them. We have to agree to it. Then at times when we are under obedience, there are events which is involving destructive obedience proceed so quickly, we do not have time. So, lack of time and space to reflect and understand leads to obedience at times. Then how do we resist this obedience? So when we talk about obedience, how do we resist it? How do we make sure that we should not agree to things? This is incorrect in nature. Like for example, when we talked about conformity also, we were resisting conformity. So obedience is not 100% destructive. Always remember, when we are talking about the social influence, it is 20 to 30% when given by your teachers, when given by your elders. It is the correct thing. But at times when we are working in organization, taking it as a social culture, taking it as a social emotional culture, it does get something which is destructive. Also the flash mobs on the road, the riots on the mob on the road at times are destructive obedience. People just get into the feeling aggressive and being part of the others and doing like the others are doing because they're a part of the group. They do not want to disobey, they do not want to be away from the group, and they obey it. They do not have time to reflect, they don't know what was the right and the wrong, and they do the same thing and agree to the command. Let's resist obedience which is incorrect, reminding that people who are the commands are responsible for the harm that is done. So reminding that you are taking the command, but remember the action is done by you. You are responsible for it. So giving them the responsibility of the action that they do. Then reminding that after a particular point of time, the total submission to destruction, destructive commands can be unethical. So telling them that too much of a destructive nature of an obedience can be wrong. It's unethical. It's not correct in nature. Then exposing the individual to the actions of the models who disobeyed the command, telling them, showing them role modeling of the ones who disobeyed and the reason why they're disobeying, that this is an incorrect mode of obedience and they're disobeying because it's harmful, it's leading to losses more than gains. So we show them, see, these are the role models who have denied the obedience and this is the reason. So seeing that is also one way of resisting it. Then questioning expertise. Why should I do it? What will it result to? What is the benefit which is coming? So people who are telling you to obey something, question them. What is it leading to? How are we planning this? So authority of the person who is giving command, you need to question them. The authority figures needs to be asked, what is the reason behind this? What is the reasoning, the analysis behind it? Please answer. So this is the way that you get clarity, introspection, thought analysis, reasoning of why are you obeying. Then knowing about the true power of commanding authority, at times just feeling that they're white collar people of the society, you just don't need to agree to them. You just don't need to do things that they are saying you. There could be hidden messages, there could be incorrect messages. So please analyze the power properly. Know if the commanding person is actually an authority or not. So that tells us that at times obedience can also be destructive in nature. This was proved by Milligram's experiment by the electric shock, where there were people who were the learners being the fake confidants, and there were uh, real subjects who were giving electric shock, and they went on giving electric shock because the experimenter of the experiment told that this is something that you need to continue. So it can be destructive both to yourself and people around. How can we resist it? Resist it by questioning the expert, knowing that your actions are your responsibility, not the person who's commanding you. At one point, destructive obedience can be unethical, it can be charged to you too, and know that what is an authority. Is the authority actually commanding authentic, actually genuine? So that is something that we talk about as obedience. Knowing that obedience, conformity, and compliance are major three social influences, remember the strongest is obedience and the least strongest is, and hidden is conformity. Conformity at times happen and we don't get to know. So let's come to the difference between conformity and obedience. Knowing that compliance is something which is a request as a social influence, and that request is done with the help of techniques, which is there are mode of techniques that we have. Something that we need to strike a difference between is conformity and obedience. Why? Conformity is a social influence which is exerted as a group pressure. See, an obedience is something which is exerted as an authority figure. So, behavior in accordance to the socially accepted conventions, Anna. Then, obedience would be something, when we talk about obedience, this is behavioral traits of being compliant to an order or a request coming from an authority figure as a commandment from a head. So, this is the two difference. That's hidden. Coming again, there's a pressure to agreeing to a group norm. Here, the pressure is agreeing to an authority figure. Power authority is very indirect here. So the norm is being created by seniors, it's being created by your group members as a collection, as a majority, but it is very indirect. We don't get to know who's the one who's created it. Power authority is very direct, comes to you, tells you to do it, and you have to do it. Then, when we talk about conformity, needed primarily to guide the standard and accepted path. So, usually, at times, conformity is not always negative. It is done to tell you what a group behavior is like. That as a group, we need to behave like this. And when we talk about obedience, it's the needed to retain the originality in the norms, that we are the structure and commandment, you need to agree to it. This is the line of action. And the last, if you fail to conform, you'll be marginalized, told as a misfit. If you do not obey, show obedience, you will suffer punishment. You will suffer the fact that you will be punished. So not conforming can lead to misfit, can lead to alienate you from the group, marginalize you, ignore you. Obedience can lead to bad consequences, major punishment, making you suffer, giving you bad, something which is major punishment, like not doing something which is given as an organizational task. You found it, it's wrong, and you've not done it. but you'll be penalized because you've not done it. It's incompletion of your task. So this is the difference between social influences, conformity and obedience. Both can go as a negative way, but they also have a positive trait. So this finishes with almost unit 9 of ours as social influence. So this is how people exert pressure on us as real and imagined. Hope the class was interesting for all of you. Thank you.